Here's what's coming up on today's show.
If something changes, that's what you pay me for. That's why I'm here, to be the quarterback between your estate planning attorneys, between your CPAs, to help you invest your money and make sure that we're on track, not just a stockbroker, not just somebody that invests money.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years. We're going to have a little fun today. We're gonna get literary on the show, talking about Mark Twain and seeing what we can learn from some of his most interesting and famous quotes. Have you read much Mark Twain in your life?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
But the parts that I read are kind of funny. You have to think about what the man's saying a lot of times. It's kind of fun to read it.
Well, and that's what we were thinking, because we were looking through some of his most famous quotes, and we were like, wow, there's kind of a lot of financial connections and lessons embedded in some of this broader life advice, or some of it may not even be intended so much as of advice as it is just commentary. But that's what we're going to do today. We're going to extrapolate some of this advice out of the various comments that Mark Twain made over the years. You ready for a primer, a warm-up one?
Sure. Give me an easy one first time.
We'll start with an easy one. It's nice and short. Mark Twain once said, apparently there is nothing that cannot happen today. How does that strike you?
Hang on a minute. Nothing that cannot. So double negative.
I got double negative there, yeah.
I've got you. So is that like if anything can happen today?
Yeah, anything can happen today, right?
Yeah, so who knows? So we have to be sure. If we're talking for what I do for a living, you've got to look at it and say, I have an investment portfolio, or you get the call and the C words thrown out there. You never know, or maybe, I hate to say this one, the spouse says, yeah, I'm done. There's things that are going to happen, and you need to have a way to plan for those things. And then when the changes happen, well, we'll have to stop, regroup, and take another step. I was looking back through some of the notes. I used to take a lot of notes, especially early on in my investment career. And then, 2000 hit. That was a difficult time for me. But 2008 and 2009, not so bad, because I was ready for that thing to happen. Not that I anticipated 2008. I just knew what to do because I had more experience. So, if you were all stocks in your account in 2008, you probably lost about half of the money you had. And, if you compare that, say, to a portfolio of all treasury bonds, you actually made money because that was the lifeboat that everybody ran to. So I'm not saying you should be fully invested in either one of those, but I am saying that the allocations that you have should really have three different components. So, I always say this, if you have money that you need now or very short term, don't put that in the growth investment. You need that in your safe stuff, the money market, short-term T-bills, things that can't go boom in a short period of time. The other side of that, clear on the other side, is growth. If you do not have money for growth, unless you just have a big old pile of it, you need some money for long-term growth. And then in between those two, you've got to have what I call a cash machine, something that's paying interest, paying dividends, that has cash flow, real estate, those types of things to give you checks that you can either put in your short term or your growth bucket. So that's kind of how you would think about the three, but a well-designed, solid financial plan, cash flow plan, all that's going to incorporate your goals for annual income. So think about that. I want to have X amount of income when I no longer am working for a living. Very different than when you're working. And then you look at your sources of reliable cash flow. So what are those? Are you lucky enough to have a pension? I had a phone call this week with a guy who works for the post office. He has a great pension, so that's cash flow that a lot of us don't get to have. And so if you don't have that, it doesn't matter. You just need to build a strategy that gets you to the finish line instead of ending up short later in life. So, the CFP credo is let's make a plan together. Let's make a plan. That's what we do. We sit down and analyze where you are today. We look at what you want for income goal, what you've already saved, what you are saving, look at your debt like your mortgages and those types of things and say, how do I make that work so that when you retire, it'll last as long as you do, and then maybe pass on some for legacy to your heirs. Important stuff.
Yeah, so if anything can happen today, or as Mark Twain put it, nothing that cannot happen today, put a plan in place that can deal with those things and deal with those curveballs.
Well, let me say something else.
Sure.
So I've had some clients lately that said, yeah, I've got a kid that's totally alienated from me, and I'm probably not going to leave them anything. And you can see the remorse in their face, but it's like they're just not acting like my children. So we had to go to the attorney. Same thing, you look at somebody and after maybe 30 years of marriage, they go, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. We have a lot of work to do as a financial planner besides just invest the money. So some of the things would be, how do we equally divide the money? Not just give you the taxable account and I keep the IRA, because that's not fair. The same thing for your wills. How would you like to be laying on the bed and you're awake but you can't answer, and then your ex-spouse was the one that got to make the choice between pulling the plug or not? That'd be a weird day.
Yeah, not uncomfortable. Hey, file that under apparently there's nothing that cannot happen today. That's happened before to people, right?
100 times. And so, let's make sure that we get everything right based on your situation. If something changes, that's what you pay me for. That's why I'm here, to be the quarterback between your estate planning attorneys, between your CPAs, to help you invest your money and make sure that we're on track, not just a stockbroker, not just somebody that invests money. Anyway, I got off pontificated, but anyway, that's what I think.
I like it when you get on tangents, so no worries. I think that was helpful. All right, we're talking about Mark Twain, lessons from some of his most famous quotes, and Mark Twain was a contrarian, and this next quote definitely proves it. We've heard that, money is the root of all evil. Well, Mark Twain just changed that ever so slightly and said, the lack of money is the root of all evil.
Not the love of it.
Not the love
anyway,
of it, yeah.
Well, these shows that we do on the radio are primarily about retirement. So when you think about what you're doing right now, so you're working, you go to work every day, you come home, you've got a weekend, and the cash flow that you have from your employment is how you're paying your bills. You're probably socking some money into various savings and investments, and it's like, okay, this is working, and you're looking maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and you're saying, I want to stop this job. I don't want to be that anymore. And all of a sudden, you rush up on that, and that day occurs. The following week, there is no paycheck. And so after about 3 months, you're going to get nervous because I don't have a check. Where do I get paid? And it becomes a very serious thing. So I always see this, the people that are aggressive investors, all of a sudden they're going, how do I convert this into cash flow? And I had a friend that visited me last week. We haven't seen him in a long time. They drove up from Hilton Head, and we're sitting there talking, and he says, yeah, all I care about is the cash flow now. I don't care as much about hitting a home run on a stock. I want to make sure that the money keeps flowing. And so how do you do that? So you've got to look at it and say, what are my sources? If you're lucky to have a pension, that's a source of income. You got to design it properly. Do I have one of these annuities that'll write me a check for the rest of my life? That's good cash flow. Social Security. People worry about it, but it's paying, and there's plenty of money there now, and I'm sure they're going to have to solve it, or we'll hang them all. That's the kind of thing. Those are things that you'll get paid on. So those are the base of your income in retirement, and then the rest of it's got to come from the pile of money that you've accumulated for the rest of your life. It'll make you a little uncomfortable also when you start pulling money out of an account that you've never, ever pulled money out of. We had a lovely couple come down from Virginia last week. We went through the analysis. We found an income that would work. They were a little high on what they wanted to begin with, but at the end of it, I said, look, you've got to change, because she's quitting at the end of this year, you've got to change how we approach money, because they were very heavy in equities. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're at a different stage in your life, and we're going to have to set this up and stage it so that you don't get nervous and turn your Social Security on at 62. We've got to make sure that you make the right pension decision, because she had 2. And then the rest of the money, when we ran the analysis and withdrew money, because I don't even think she's 60 yet. I've got to remember. But anyway, when we took money from the various accounts, she's like, I don't know if I like that. And I'm like, well, that's where that's going to come from, because that's what you had to choose from. So we worked through that and got comfortable with the idea, but she'd never thought about taking money out of an account that she had always added to her whole life. So it's fun to watch in a way, can make you nervous, but once you build a plan and understand, I have this cash flow component, I have the safe stuff for the next 2 or 3 years, and that's the money we're drawing off of. We're taking it out of there. And then I've got to leave some of this for the future, because if you live 20 or 30 years, you want to have money all 20 or 30 years that's going to pay to you. And then also you want to do something for legacy and make sure that your children or grandchildren are taken care of and you leave them better than you found them. So those are things that as we look through it, maybe the lack of money, that's a bad thing. And so I'll call it the root of all evil.
Craig, we've been talking about Mark Twain, famous quotes from him, and spinning it into financial advice and guidance, and you've given us some great nuggets so far. I can't wait for this next one. It was Mark Twain who said, "Suppose you were an idiot, and suppose you were a member of Congress, but I repeat myself."
Push me over on the edge of the diving board. See how I fall.
Linking the two together.
No, I'm not biting that one. It should probably go without saying that your plan for retirement needs to be able to survive whatever our friends on Capitol Hill do. I mean, legislators change the laws. So let's look at the end of 2025. That'll be a good thing to look at. If you read the law as it's written, our personal federal income tax schedule changes. And you go, well, how much? It kind of will go back to the way it was in 2017, Obama style, lower standard deduction, some exemptions this time, and the scale of how it ramps up will be a little different. It wasn't quite as good as the one we're in right now, to make it a nice way to say it. But people spend a lot of time, worrying about the election. It'll happen. There's been all kinds of back and forth on the leaders that we have. I hate to say this, if you read the Bible, this has been going on a long time, the stuff that's going on now. It's not new, it's just new to us. So you just have to make sure that you have taken charge of your situation, because you can't control that. That's the bottom line. All we can do is work with the numbers that they give us. If they change the tax code, if they do something to Social Security, we'll have to work our way through it. This has happened many times before, so it will happen in the future. What if estate tax, that's one of the things that might happen at the end of 2025. The estate tax is supposed to go from, I think it's $12.8 million personal exemption right now per person. It might go back down to 6 or 7 or 8 million. So a lot of people I work with, it doesn't bother them at all right now for estate tax, but if it went back to that, it would impact them a lot. They have accumulated assets and life insurance and then just money and investments that would be far above that, and all of a sudden you're going, I hadn't thought about that estate plan in a long time because I haven't had to. Now you do. So again, we'll have to see what happens, and then we will have to work the problem if there is one. That's why you want to work with somebody that has experience in financial planning, because just the investment part, people that just do investments, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but fairly myopic. You only have one bullet in your gun, if you will, and that's the work that you do. But if you're working with your attorneys, if you're working with your CPAs, that's what we do, to make sure that there's an integrated plan there. Well, heck, that makes a whole lot more sense than just saying, okay, I'm going to worry about everything, and you end up with paralysis by analysis. You don't do anything, which a lot of times is what people do. Don't let this stuff bother you. Turn the TV off. This is the worst it's going to be as we get into November. So the best thing to do is decide what you're going to do when you vote, and then the rest of it, we'll just do the planning for you, and if something changes, we'll make sure we make the changes for you. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, sometimes you need that help, you need that guidance, and you're certainly there and ready to help folks with that, Craig. We're talking about Mark Twain, quotes from him that we can learn financial lessons from. That was definitely
I don't know if I want to keep
one.
doing these.
Yeah, we're getting you in trouble here just
now. That's right. These are hard.
That was a deep one for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, how about this next one?
Did I dodge it well?
You did. You stepped right around it.
Thank you so much.
I mean, it was about politics, and you handled it like a politician pretty much, so well done. This next one's kind of funky, so I think you'll like it. October is one of the particularly dangerous months for speculating in stocks. The others are July, January, September, April, November, May, March, June, December, August, and February. I love how he mixes them up.
Did we exclude any? The other 12 there?
Did. I think there were 12, yeah.
Well, it's true. I mean, from my side, so I'll just tell you what happened. If we take a younger investor, they want to trade, they want a 7% trailing stop, they're wanting new list every week. And I mean, that's a lot of work. And half the time it doesn't work. If you get a solid, good plan that has all the components to it, it works. But it might bore them because they're wanting to hit the home run and make it happen immediately. And I'm like, no, we can make this work. And so the hot stock thing, the home run stuff, that's your play money. Okay, that's a hobby. But the things that count for your goals, the education of your children, the money to pay for your retirement, the various big goals, we need to have a solid way that we approach it that we can measure and are predictable and have some sort of approach other than I'm going to try to hit a home run every time I step up at the plate. You just can't do it for your serious money. Now, when you do have one and you blow the doors off of it, hooray. And we should feel real good about that. I mean, we've had plenty of NVIDIA in our portfolios. We had a lot of Palantir. We've had all that stuff in there, but it wasn't the entire investment, and we didn't overload it with those two. It was part of an overall portfolio. So the approach is measured and something that we can have control of, both from a tax perspective and we're trying to get the growth at a reasonable price type of approach.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I don't think any more needs to be said about that when it comes to the market, and that one landed home nicely. So how about this next Mark Twain quote? Craig, excited to get to this next one. How unfortunate a thing it is for a man to have wealth and for him to make a god of it instead of a servant. Man, talk about deep wisdom.
Yeah, I got to think about that one a second.
Yeah.
So I tell the younger ones to get money making money, and it's hard for them to grasp that. So you get up every morning and you go earn your check. Okay, you get your check, you put it in the bank, you pay for your stuff, and then you go do it again next time. That's man at work. So kind of you're not a servant, you're sort of a servant to your money because you have to have it to get you to the next week and the next week and the next week. Whereas if you accumulate assets that pay, so I'll do real estate for a little while. I love real estate. I think it's a great investment. It shouldn't be your only investment, but I think it's a great investment. And you have cash flow from a rental, or you have cash flow from, some sort of revenue that's inside of a real estate payment. You're not going out every day and earning that money. It's coming to you as cash flow. So we do a lot of bonds. We do a lot of a particular investment called structured income notes, where I hate to do rates and stuff, but I mean, we're getting greater than 9% on those all the time, or we don't do them. And they actually pay us the money. It's not like a maybe payout. So those are things that you get checks for. And if you're an investor, it's nice to see that money actually pay rather than saying, hey, this thing went up and I was so excited, and by the time I decided I wanted to sell it, it went back down. That is an investment, but cash flow is a great thing to have, and you need to make sure that you always have that part in an investment portfolio, because when you retire, so I segued there, when you are no longer earning a paycheck, you're going to want cash flow. So where do you get it from? If you have the S&P 500, I mean, the dividend's below 2%. So you're not really going to make enough on that to move the needle for you. But if you have other things that are going to pay you, and you structure that portfolio so that you have the money for now and the money for later and the cash flow in the middle, it works great, because you've built a plan, and now we just need to stay on track. The worst thing that happens is somebody says, yeah, I need an extra $22,000 outside of the budget that I had for the RV or something. I'm like, now we have to do what the Siri thing does, or the Waves thing does, and say recalculating. I've got to go back and redo it. But if we stay on track and have it set up the right way, money is not the thing you have to go out and hunt every single day. It will come to you through cash flow, interest, dividends, rental payments. Those types of things are wonderful to see in your mailbox. And at some point you're going to want it.
Yeah, you're going to want that for sure. All right, I think we can squeeze in one more here, Craig.
Shoot, these are hard.
Unless you just want to
I was hoping I talked long enough on that to finish it up.
You almost got us there. This one's a short one, though, so I think it's a nice one to put a bow on the Mark Twain conversation here. The secret to getting ahead is getting started.
Yeah. Or starting is half done. I don't know who said that one.
I like that. That's even shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. How about that one?
Yeah, all those.
I actually have a coffee cup that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with Dad saying, I know a shortcut. But the same thing.
I like that.
At the end of the day, if you look at your future and say, let's say you're really young and you say, I still want to plan for my retirement. I don't want to work until I'm 80. How do I make this happen? We can set a goal, and then I can show you how much you've got to accumulate at a rate of return to get you there. So then all of a sudden you go, okay, if I'm going to quit at 65, I want a $100,000 type lifestyle. I'm just making the number up. I can show you what you've got to save to get there. And I can show you how to invest in a way that will get you there with a measured approach. And, if that's what you want, we can make that happen. But, if you're just going to kind of say, okay, I understand that I've got to save this money. I had a nice lady come in and I said, you're way behind, because she was late 50s and single. And I said, you've got to save this much. It was like $14,000 a year. And she kind of blinked a little bit and said, well, I've got this thing to buy and a couple of things other, but I'll start next year. And I'm looking at her going, the steps get steeper every year that you wait. They don't get level. I mean, you're going to have to work harder next year than you would this year if you can't save it. So you've got to be serious about your goal. And then we've got to make a plan and work that plan consistently to give you what you want when that paycheck is no more. And that's the truth of it.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.